Hey, welcome to Younger and Older. This is Jason and Dave hanging out at the studios in Silver Birch Ranch in the North Woods of Wisconsin. It's the time of year where you don't really know what season it is.
You don't.
You can wake up and it's warmer. You can wake up and it's colder. You wake up and the snow's there. You can wake up and the snow's gone. Today's one of those days you wake up and for the first time this year we've had some snow.
It's beautiful. I was out this morning. I had an appointment early this morning. I'm driving. The trees are gorgeous.
Oh, it's beautiful.
This is a time of year where I think God just says, I'm going to show you how beautiful cold and snow can be.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's a beautiful snowstorm. And for those that think snow is nothing but a pain, they need to come up to the North Woods and get out in the woods and see what God does in nature with snow. It's absolutely breathtaking at times.
Yeah, it's very nice.
You know, in fact, one of the things you learn in life is you can moan about any situation you want. Or
That's very true.
you can look and say, what are the positives here?
Yep.
And I know you do that with your kids because I see if it snows like this, you'll get behind a four-wheeler or snowmobile, put them on a tube, and drag them all over the place. And I hear a lot of screaming and yelling. And I think those are good screams and good yells, but I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Well, with three boys, I'm sure it's a mixture of
It could be.
screams at times.
It could be a wrestling match going on in the middle of it as well.
Yep, and then somebody gets snow in the face, and all of a
Yep.
sudden it turns from a good scream to a bad scream.
Yep.
But no, yeah, we try to be intentional with that. I think one of the things that we enjoy doing is just trying to do stuff together, and especially something that's more physical and not with screens.
Absolutely.
Because it's just important.
So we're talking about screens, and this summer we're making that decision that we don't want phones here and screens
Yes.
here, and we're full speed into it. Any great objections, or do you want to say something to those that are listening to us about why we continue to press on that way, or do we want to just remain silent?
No, I mean, I'm all for engaging. You know, when it comes to screens, I think all of us, if we're honest, would say that our culture has an addiction to screens, whether it's cell phones, social media, tablets. I mean, even as we sit here, we got how many screens in front of us, you know, and some of them, you know, and I understand that there's an argument saying, well, it's so part of our culture, like, you just got to embrace it. But when both secular and Christian research is showing how negatively impacted, especially young people, are to screens, being in the realm of Christian camping and what we offer, we've always been about relationships. We've always been about going into nature, into God's creation, and doing stuff together. That's how we've been for the last 56 years, Dave. And nothing's changed. And so as we assess our summer, and even as we've watched trends change and even observed young people, you know, we've been able to observe young people in a way that we've seen a negative trend to the point where it says, you know what, we came to the conclusion, like, we need to do something to challenge this.
Yeah.
Because it's taking away from really what camp is all about, and it's really encouraging young people to be in relationship. God has designed us for relationship, and especially since COVID, I think no matter who you ask, anybody that's looked into it would say that relationships have grown worse. Especially young people don't know how to interact anymore.
Right.
And so our goal in taking away the phone for the 5 days that campers are here is really for that. You know, we could be the bad guys. That's fine. I got no problem with it. Why? Because I know that young people will appreciate it. And we actually have several partner churches that have already taken the step in previous summers, you know, and I asked them, like, you know, how did this work with students and parents and all that sort of stuff? And the biggest thing is by the end of it, the students actually thank them.
Right.
Because you don't have the pressure of posting things, staying connected. You could just be in the moment and enjoy the relationships. And that's really what we want, is we want to teach young people that, you know, we understand that maybe going without your phone is an impossible thing in life in general. But at least we need to bring into the discussion, you know, the necessity of how much. You know, because yes, you know, a phone is a communication piece. It keeps you, you know, talking with other people. But I would say if we were to push onto that, how much of that is actually being used for that purpose, or just endless scrolling or different things like that. And so really, as we approach the summer, we just want to provide a space where we can reintroduce relationships to young people. And I get that some people might not like that. But I'd say give it a try. And for the parents out there, I understand there's a component where you want to stay in touch with your young people. But I want you to also know that we do this for a living. We've been doing this for 57 years, Dave.
Right.
And we one of our biggest pillars is we want to have a safe environment. We want to be safe, we want to be affordable, we want to be effective, we want to be fun here at Silver Birch Ranch. And safety is of paramount. And so we want you to be able to trust us in that. And that's understandable.
Yeah.
And so you know that we can trust us. We've taken things, and many of you might remember the storm. We're able to keep everybody safe, and we've taken even steps since then. We have generators that kick in, and so if something were to happen, we have ways that we can communicate. We'll always have a phone line up that will communicate to parents if something happens. But know that you could send them to us and trust us that we'll take care of them and send them back to you.
Right.
And that's really the environment that we're trying to establish here at Silver Birch Ranch, is to provide space for us to go back to the way that God intended relationships to be, and to help young people see the value and the refreshingness of it. Because it used to be where kids would get off the bus and they would just jump in and start using their imagination, and it didn't matter what we had planned, they would go out there and have fun. And I've even noticed, with the introduction of more phones, you don't see that as much.
Right.
You see people seclude themselves right away. In a situation where they don't know what to do, they bring out their phone and they scroll endlessly or misdirectionally, and they just kind of use it as a buffer because they're hitting a social awkward moment.
Right.
And for those of you listening, you understand what I'm talking about, because you probably all do it as well. If you're in a social context and you really don't know what to do, you pull out your phone and you avoid the situation. That's what we're trying to avoid.
Right.
Is we want to teach young people the importance of relationship, because that's what's going to help mental health. That's what is going to help these young people really establish healthier boundaries, relationships, and habits going forward. And if you were to even start looking at the research, like I said, the research is all over the place of the importance of that.
Right.
And so if we could do that for 5 days for a young person, that's why we do it.
Yeah. It's so important. If you were to talk to somebody who is older, like myself, we would tell you that relationships are not better. They're not better than they used to be.
No.
And that's because of the electronics. Now, I can tell you that when television, I'm from the era where they still had black and white television. It wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Very few channels, that kind of thing. And still, television started to ruin relationships. I've said for years to the Nicolet Bible Institute students, if your whole relationship, if you're dating somebody, your whole relationship is revolved around like going to a movie, you don't have a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you're looking at other people's lives.
Yeah.
You're looking at action in other people's lives. You have no action in yours.
Yeah.
None. So you're living vicariously through them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not even talking phone at this point. I'm not even talking all the connections and all the movies, all the YouTubes, all the. But then I look and I see. I was in the airport and I was sitting there waiting for, the airplane, and I decided no matter what, I'm not taking out my phone. I don't want to take it out.
Yeah.
And I looked around. I was the only one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking around. Nobody's talking to anybody. Everybody's on their phone. And if they're not listening to, some of them were listening to music and on their phone, looking at scrolling things while they're listening to things. And I'm thinking, nobody talks to each other. They don't look at each other. They don't express themselves anymore. This is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to be relational people, and relationships takes communication. And here's what bothers me, so I'll throw this at you. Okay. I've had young people argue with me that they have better relationships because of the phone.
I would disagree.
Because they keep in touch better with their friends, they keep in touch better with their relatives because of the phone. And I'm sitting there thinking, my only answer to them is, no, you don't.
Right.
Well, that's not a whole lot of research behind that comment. It's like I'm just an old guy saying, no, you don't. Well,
and Dave, even as an old guy, you could lean into that. Be like, well, how do you keep in touch better?
Yeah.
Do you take a random snapshot of the ceiling every minute and send, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Because that's half of what their communication is.
Yep.
It's just all this silly nonsense.
Or it's a manufactured something. So right now you can manufacture how you look. You can manufacture. You could do that for a long time with. You want to post a picture, you can touch it up. I can even look young again. on the pictures.
Wow. There you go.
You know, here's something that you'll find amusing, which I'm not going to give to anybody else. But for Valentine's Day, I went to an AI site and improved my looks and sent it to my wife.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. She thought it was the dumbest thing maybe she's ever seen in her life. However, I was young. I had a little bit of hair, you know, a little bit of backside stuff going on there.
Wow.
Yeah, I was pretty good looking.
A little bit of backside stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Are you referring?
Hair growing down your backside. You know,
a mullet?
So, yeah, mullet. That's it.
There
Backside mullet. Yeah, you know.
Can you have a front side?
You can, but then you're cousin it.
Oh,
you know,
boy.
at that particular point.
That's right.
Look up cousin. No, don't look it
Don't
up.
look
I'm
it
trying
up.
to get you off the.
Oh man.
Forget it. But you know what? Here's what I think. Phones and electronics, entertainment in general.
Yeah.
I think they've become addictions.
I would agree.
So as you look at an addiction, there's ways to beat addictions.
Mm-hmm.
But first, the very first thing people have to do is admit that they're addicted
to it. And I think that's the point of culture where we're not willing to admit the fact that we're addicted to screens.
Right.
You know, I mean, I could say something as simple, you know, to our listeners right now is how many of you could actually go for a week straight to the bathroom without bringing your phone with you?
Yeah. I can.
Now that sounds silly, right?
can.
Yeah. But honestly, you know,
Right.
like I'm sure there's some study somewhere where how the length of sitting down on the can has increased drastically since the introduction of the phone.
Yep, that could be.
You know, and that's a silly example, but I mean the reality is that I think oftentimes, I mean another kind of pushback I get when it comes to coming to camp. Well, the bus ride's 5 hours.
Well, talk to somebody.
What are they going to do without a phone? It's like, hello. You know, it's the same conversation that we have with our boys when we go on a road trip. You know, can we watch something? No. Well, what can we do? Play a game. You know, I mean, we grew up in a generation who figured out what to do.
I was going to ask you what you did on the bus coming up to camp. Because did you ever ride the bus coming up to camp?
That's how I made my camp friends.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know anybody.
Right.
So you'd hang out with them, you know, you try to sneak seat to seat. I didn't say that out loud, you know, but, you know, you did and then you play games, you get to know each other. You know, it's like, well, what games do you play? You figure it out.
Right.
Whether it's the license plate game, the alphabet game.
Or you talked.
You played cards, you just figured out where
By
people
the time
were
you
from.
got to camp, you know this guy was a Cub fan, this guy was a Sox fan.
Yeah.
They decided not to like each other, you know, for a few minutes anyway.
Because really, it's the way up that we're talking about. Because the way back, everybody sleeps.
Right.
Everybody, I mean, mostly.
Right.
And like that's where if you know how to be relational, then that's not as daunting.
Yep.
But I mean, it's the same with you mentioned music and earbuds. You know, it's like we can't go through periods where we're disconnected, and our culture doesn't know how to deal with it. And I think, Dave, that not only do we see issues with that just in things that we've talked about, but I think that carries over with our relationship with God and the issues that we see.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and especially in young people. I mean, we're seeing more and more articles come out, and I don't even need, if you need an article to tell you this, but even within our church culture or Christian culture, how much it's fading away because there's people that just don't know how to have a relationship with God anymore. And I think part of it is that we're so connected and so addicted to screens that we don't even allow ourselves to unplug long enough to get to know who God is relationally anymore. And, you know, and get to be able to put ourselves and posture ourselves in a situation where we can hear God speak to us, you know. And I think that's where Satan is winning.
Right. Is
we keep saying, well, we need this stuff. It's like, hello. It's pulling us not only away from each other, but it's pulling us away from God. Right where Satan wants us.
Right.
And it's isolating us. And there's a reason, I think, we see numbers of mental health and suicide increasing drastically since COVID is because we keep leaning more into screens to satisfy relationships. But that's like an oxymoron.
You don't have a relationship if it's only on a screen.
Right.
And that's the argument I started talking to you about earlier, because young people are telling me as an old guy, no, you do have relationships on screens. And I keep thinking, no, you don't. Mm-hmm. First of all, I can lie on a screen real easy. I can make things up. I can make it look better than it is. I can do all kinds of things there.
Yeah, on a screen, you could look as stunningly beautiful as me, Dave.
I could. And we can play with that. See, that's the issue.
But that's the thing is on the screen, you could portray whoever it is to however you, and that's the thing. We have these influencers. I mean, we do video stuff here at camp and pictures and stuff, and it's amazing to me how you can edit things these days. Not only that, but now AI does it for you.
Right.
You just talked about that, how you teach yourself, and it makes you,
It was funny going through the AI and putting my picture in there and having it adjust it.
Oh, I believe it. It's crazy.
I enjoyed it. It was like, that is weird.
Oh,
that is
totally
weird. That isn't me.
I mean, they used to talk about photoshopping stuff.
Right.
I mean, now that's like that on steroids. But the thing is people just take what they see at face value and run with it.
Right.
So if you're scrolling through TikTok, it's like, oh, look at that. It's like, hello. Do you understand like how much fakeness is in that?
Yep.
And yet that's the reality.
Yeah.
And those are the relationships that we say are relationships. It's like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, not only that, I think in the fakeness of it all, and again, the argument I keep hearing is, well, it's not fake because it's real. AI is real because someone has to do it, program it. Okay, fine. Here's what I did. I went to a site, AI art site.
Yeah.
And I typed in, because Silver Birch Ranch, so I typed in a birch forest.
Yeah.
It painted a beautiful birch forest. No human did that.
Right.
The computer did that. And that was my painting. I could do what I want with it now. And I'm thinking, you know what? Have we just taken budding artists and great artists and said, you're unnecessary now? I can get something painted without you.
Yeah.
And you look at the whole, there's so much, this stuff is addicting to people. We need to get to the point where we understand its addictive nature.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure we put safeguards in place just like you would any other addiction. So, the people that I talk to that were trying to stop smoking, for example. Yeah. That's an addiction. So, okay, first of all, you got to say smoking is a problem.
Right.
If you're not going to say that, you're not going to do anything. You have to understand it. So if you're still out there, if everybody's out there saying electronics is not a problem, okay, then you're never going to solve that thing. It's kind of like this, I've talked to people, and right now our nation is at a record in credit card debt. That's a problem.
Yeah.
But there's some people think, well, you have a credit card, you can max it out, it's not a problem. And I'm sitting there going, no, you need to understand something. The credit card can be a great tool.
Yeah.
But it can destroy you.
Absolutely.
Financially.
Yeah.
So depending on your discipline, tool or destruction, it depends on your discipline and if you use the tool as a tool. It's kind of like I can have a hammer and I can use it to destroy things or I can use it to build things.
Right.
It can do both. So what am I going to do? You can't blame the hammer. I'm not going to blame the credit card for my debt. So what do I do then? Well, I realized that there's a way to use it and I need to learn to use it and I need to learn when not to use it.
Yeah.
Very simple. So I look at electronics, I think the same thing as an older guy. It's like, okay, this stuff's addictive. It can be deceptive because of the way people portray things on there. It can be used by influencers, and the whole idea of influencers is to influence. So they're just trying to get me to do something. They don't really care for my best interest. They care for their best interest, but they have to come across as if they care for my best interest. Okay, I need to admit those things. I need to start looking honestly at what's going on with that and begin to grasp the whole idea of, okay, this is something that can be addictive, something I need to watch. So what I used to do actually was anything that's addictive, I like to stop for a while. Just to show. For example.
That's a great habit.
I used to, and I still do. I quit coffee for a long time at one point because of some heart issues, but I don't really see a problem with coffee. I love coffee, drink it. I have 2 cups a day. That's not exactly what somebody would call an addict.
No.
However, it's enough to have caffeine in your system, and if you don't have those 2 cups of coffee, you get a headache. Therefore, I would say that's an addiction of some sort because you have some kind of withdrawal. So what I've done every year almost is to, at some point in the year, is to start saying, okay, I'm going to have my regular coffee, but instead I'm going to use 3/4 caffeinated, 1/4 uncaffeinated, beans.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go half and half. Then I'm going to go 1/4 and 3/4. Then I'm going to go all decaf. I'm going to do that for a couple weeks. I'm off caffeine.
Yeah.
Just to do it because I want to acknowledge the fact that caffeine can be addictive.
Yes. Yeah.
That's all I'm doing, and I'm not trying to be a snob about it. I'm never out there preaching that other people should do it. That's not my goal. My goal for myself is to try and remain healthy and understand this could be addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want it to be addictive.
Right.
And so I want to enjoy the cup of coffee. I want to enjoy the taste. I want to enjoy, and so I'll find some good decafs that I like, and that kind of thing. And I've had some coffee lovers kind of make fun of me saying, well, what's the point without the caffeine? And I'm saying, that's the point.
Right.
I mean, that's my point. My point is I don't want to be addicted to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually like the taste of coffee, so I don't need the caffeine to get the taste.
Right.
So I can actually have coffee.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's all. Now, that to me, I see a great parallel with electronics. There's a tool, whether it be credit card, whether it be coffee, whatever.
Right.
It's a tool, but it's a tool that you need to be able to say, I'm laying it on the side.
Yep.
And if you don't do that, you're not going to have relationships like you should.
Right. And that's really just what we're saying is that we have a context where we can provide a break.
Right.
So why not?
Yeah. Because
I think there is an addiction. Not only that, but I mean, you think about the way that even our culture uses media and electronics. I've been reading through a book, and in the book it used a statistic, and young people, do you know that young people represent $65 billion of disposable income?
65 billion?
Yes.
Wow.
A year.
Where are they getting it from?
Their parents.
Oh.
Whatever, whether it's parents
I
or
was
whatever.
going to say they didn't earn it, so
No,
where are they getting it?
And so if you think about that, that's where then you get everybody targeting young people, and for whatever agenda, for whatever reason, that's what, you have companies now that aren't hiring marketing people. I mean, they are. They're hiring psychologists to help them market, you know. And so if you think about it that way, it's like you said, Dave, there's tools, and too much of a good thing can become a bad thing. And that's all we're saying is we understand that screens, even right now, we're using screens as part of our job. It's like, well, you're not going screenless. I get that. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to set boundaries.
Right.
There's boundaries is a good thing. It's that self-control that we talk about in a lot of areas of life, whether it be, coffee, whether it be eating, whether it be exercise, anybody that you talk to, in order to be healthy, it takes some sort of intentionality and discipline.
Right.
But we haven't really established the discipline of screen maintenance.
Right.
And that's where something has to be done.
Well, recently, as you know, because I shared it with you and some others, I read I love reading educational reviews. And one of the things I was reading that's very consistent in education is when you handwrite something down, you actually remember it far greater than if you type it. And they were using illustrations of people who would type for a living, so I could be typing what you and I are saying and listening at the same time, or I could be typing notes in a class. I don't remember the typing like I would the writing. And not only that, but the young people that I've mentored through the years, one of the things that I found, and that all of them have thanked me for if they've done it, is the fact that before they go to sleep at night, I'm telling them, I want you to take a notebook like this, which I got at Silver Birch Ranch, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah. And you open it up and you write in it what you're going to do the next day. Just write it down.
Yeah.
Do you know that the research tells us when you do that, you sleep better? It's like your mind says, okay, you've got a plan for tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Go to sleep.
Yeah.
Not typing it down. I used to keep things in my phone in the to-do list, and then that didn't work, so I didn't put it in my notes list, and then I would put it on my calendar. But that was all electronic, and for some reason, I just struggled. Then Mike on our staff, who's probably our oldest staff member at this point, I'm sure Mike appreciates that. He always carries one of these.
Always, yeah.
And so I was looking at him, talking to him about that, and then I was seeing the research, and I think, all right, I got to switch. Why? Because I think that I will remember more when I write down what I need to. Not only that, now I can go back to yesterday. I was talking to a guy on the phone, and I wrote down what we talked about. It's right there. Oh, yeah, that's what we talked about. So when I see them, I can go back to the day and do that. Now, some might say, well, I just typed that in my... You actually are going to remember it.
Or do you even go back to what you typed?
Right. Yeah, I have an awful lot of stuff I went and cleared out the other day because I was thinking, look at all those notes I've never looked at. I even took a whole program and wiped it out. I had a whole note program on here.
Yeah.
And I went and looked at it all, and eventually I said, erase the app and everything in it.
Yeah.
Why? That's how long I haven't looked at everything on there. And there's too much.
Yeah.
There's too much. This right now, I don't even need to go back to as much because they're right. You remember it a little bit more. You sleep a little bit better because you have these things written down, so you have a plan for the next day. I'm not telling the guys I mentor to write down times, like I should do this tomorrow at 1. Don't do that. Just write down, here's the goals for tomorrow. Here's what I want to get done tomorrow. Most people in life don't do that, but those that do, they sleep better, they get more done. I mean, everything about the research of that is good, and it has nothing to do with electronics. It has to do with pen and paper.
Yeah.
And they were saying that the real thing is there's an kind of an artist connection to the brain because you're actually making symbols, and your brain has to do that, and it remembers them better than just hitting. Because if I'm typing, I'm not even thinking of the letters.
No.
My brain might be doing something automatic, but I'm not thinking. But if I'm doing this, I gotta form the letter, and that's even more important when you write cursive, which they don't do anymore. So you're writing cursive, that becomes more of an art form.
Yeah.
So I guess with your 3 boys, I would say I would make them write cursive. I would give the kids, when they start writing, they were talking about people who basically, you can go back to a child and just say, at the end of the day, we're all going to just write down what happened today. And you get them writing a journal.
Yeah.
They just keep it. And again, guys like Elon Musk and some others, and you say, well, those guys aren't people I want to follow. No, but what they've said is this writing of stuff down has been valuable. And so I encourage people, get rid of the electronics a little bit, write more stuff down.
Yeah, and really, like we said, the challenge here is just to be willing to acknowledge the fact that you might have an addiction with electronics, but you can do something about it. If you need to just put it down, pick up a notebook for a little bit, rotate it out, or
come to camp and get rid of the phone for a week.
Whatever it is, I think it's always healthy to look and assess what's in our life and what we've allowed into our life and whether or not it's taking too much control or not. And I think it's a healthy thing.
Yeah, in the world there's so many arguments that go on and disagreements, especially between generations.
Yeah.
There really is a lot of things that we agree on.
Yes.
And a lot of things that we need to learn from the Bible that say, here's really what the Scripture's saying. We need to abide by it.
Yeah.
And part of the fun is finding the agreement points, not always the disagreement points, because you can disagree in generation to generation on anything you want.
That's right.
But one of the things you realize is that the principles that really guide life are going to stay the same. The methods and the ways that things are worked out are all going to be different.
Yeah.
If you listen to our last episode, we talked about electronics and screens and all that kind of stuff. And, when I was young and when you were young, those weren't even around. So in that sense, when we were young, it was different. However, you had a lot more entertainment options than I did when I was young. And then as you get older, things just change a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's so easy. The whole world right now seems to focus on what they disagree on. And if they disagree enough, they pull out a gun, start shooting somebody, and I guess I'll show you kind of attitude, and it gets sick after a while. I mean, it was sick that the Kansas City Chiefs, regardless of what you think about the Chiefs and winning or whatever else it might be in the Super Bowl, they have a big parade, and there's people that are shot there. I think when the last basketball championship was, I think it was in Denver, there was a shooting. It's like, we as a culture are getting away from being able to do anything together because somebody has to make a statement about how much they hate somebody.
Yeah.
In the process. And it's like, you don't need to hate people. You can disagree with people and still live your life and respectfully go through life and care for the people. In fact, the Bible tells us that you need to love your enemies.
Yeah.
And if I were to ask you what that meant, Jason, any idea? I mean, if somebody comes and said, love my enemies, that's a What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
I mean, you just treat them like a person.
All right.
You know?
What would you do if you love somebody? You would want what's best for them.
Yeah.
You would pray for them.
Mm-hmm.
You would help meet their needs.
Yeah.
All right. If you loved somebody, you're looking at them saying, what can I do to make their life the best it can be?
Yeah.
Now, you may not have that opportunity with an enemy,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what God tells us to do no matter who. Those we love, obviously. Those who are our enemies, we're to love them. We're to pray for them. We're to help them see the error of their ways. If it is an error and not an error in our ways,
Mm-hmm.
We too can turn people away just by being idiots at times and saying things we shouldn't say and doing things we shouldn't do.
Right.
So we need to be careful. Sometimes we're the enemy, probably, in that sense.
Yeah. Very well.
But I would encourage everyone listening, look for ways to have a civil dialogue and have a real dialogue rather than trying always to argue and win an argument.
Mm.
The only people that have to win an argument all the time, they have very fragile egos.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to feel good about themselves, they need to win a debate of some sort.
Yeah.
Debates don't have anything to do with right or wrong, though.
No.
Like if I were to say, go look at the presidential debates when they come up and decide who is right. Would you be able to?
No.
No.
Right.
In fact, rhetoric or words that people use, debates don't really determine anything. When I was younger and I took, and you had to do debates, I forget for what class because I didn't take a debate class, so it had to be something else that we were debating in.
Mm-hmm.
You could take a side you didn't even believe in and you could win.
Yeah.
Because it had nothing to do with whether you were talking truth or not. It had to do with how eloquent you were.
Right.
So people work at being eloquent, not because they want to share truth with you, but because they want to win an argument.
Mm-hmm.
Be very careful.
Yeah.
And our society, unfortunately, has gotten that way. And companies actually hire people, influencers, whatever it might be, that are eloquent and make their case. And it sounds good. But I think everybody has to have a criterion for finding truth.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's go through a list of things that people use to determine truth. Okay, so if I'm trying to find out the truth, some people use majority opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Is that valid?
No.
Why wouldn't that be valid? If I came to you, if your son came to you and said, well, most people think this, whatever it is, doesn't that make it true then?
No.
So I can't rely on a majority of opinion to help me know what truth is.
Correct.
So when we have an election in our country, that's not a true or false thing.
No.
It's just an election.
It's just an election.
So when the Supreme Court has a majority vote on one way, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true or not true.
Nope.
It just means that's what the majority say the Constitution says.
Absolutely.
Very interesting, because that's one of those things that people go back to all the time. It's like, if a majority of people, I don't know how many young people have ever used that argument with their parents, that everyone else is.
Oh, my boys, especially as they get a little bit older, I've heard that phrase quite a bit.
And you probably used it once or twice yourself when you were young.
Well, and I used the phrase that my dad did at the time. That's
Yeah,
my
there you
phrase.
go. Some things don't change through generations.
Well, we're not everybody.
Yeah. We're not everybody. We're this family, yes.
Well, I don't leave it there. I try to explain it,
Yeah.
because just saying that isn't helpful either.
Okay, so a majority actually cannot determine truth.
No.
Now, here's the funny part. A majority could.
It could, but
But that's not the criterion.
that's not that's not what decides one way or the other. The majority might align with the truth,
Right.
but they don't decide the truth.
And I think that's hard for young people to sort out, because there are times where the majority should rule.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say people are debating whether on a corner street in their neighborhood there should be 4 stop signs or 2. All right, something that's somewhat irrelevant
Yeah.
to most people. Well, how do you determine how many stop signs? Well, you could take it to a vote, and the most wins.
Yeah.
All right, so then you start politicking, if you want to call it, to try and get people to sway your way so you can get as many stop signs as you think is important to have there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a right-wrong thing.
No.
but we mistakenly think it's a right-wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I want everyone that's listening to us to understand, make sure you sort that out, because a majority opinion is just that. It's just a majority opinion. Yeah, it has nothing to do with right or wrong. And if God says something and everybody else, if the majority in your world, if the majority in your church go against what God says, then the majority is wrong, because God is going to be right in his word, and that's what we have to understand. And there are some things that you have to go back to and say, okay, this is the way it is. So truth.
Yeah.
So another thing people determine truth by is feelings. This just feels right.
Yeah.
Can we determine truth by that?
No.
No. And why would you say that? I mean, if I'm in the middle of something, it just feels so right. How can it not be right?
Well, I mean, feelings can go both ways.
Okay.
You know.
And they change.
And sometimes in the moment they could lead you, I mean, you're married now at some point.
Right.
You fell in love with your wife and it felt good.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you dated somebody else before your wife.
I did. Didn't feel as good.
I want
to make that clear.
So, feelings are one of those things, I wouldn't, they can align with truth.
Right.
But then they also could be
so feelings can't determine truth.
No.
But it doesn't mean you don't have them.
Right.
So you can feel. Can you feel badly about truth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can think, I really feel like I want to eat ice cream 3 meals a day or whatever. And when I'm told I can't, I can feel pretty badly that I can't do that. But it doesn't determine truth.
Right.
It's just a feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's really hard for our culture to understand, because the feelings get so massive to them that they begin to determine truth and validity by how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
So feelings can't do it, and a majority can't do it. How else do you think people determine truth?
By trusting other people.
Okay. Just trusting other people. Someone who, why would you trust somebody?
Because you value their opinion.
You value their opinion, and you've seen them and whatever. Now,
Dave thinks it's true, so it's got to be true.
Exactly. Now, here's what we have to understand about every human being. Every human being is sinful. And we do need to live in a way where people can trust us. But Dave Wager, Jason Kemper, everyone you meet is still in development. They're still growing.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would tell you something. Like if I'm talking to you, I don't think you would tell me something intentionally that wouldn't be true.
Correct. Right.
But it doesn't mean that because you say it's true that it is.
Right.
I wouldn't know that. And I wouldn't know it because you're just like I am. You're on this journey to find truth. And for example, I think the Bible is one thing where you can read the Bible, you can talk about it, you can see. For example, if I were to say, what is leadership? The standard answer would be somebody has followers.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would say, okay, so if I were teaching leadership, my favorite person to teach leadership with in the Bible is Ezekiel.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody followed him.
Yeah.
So I just ruined the definition of leadership.
Yeah.
Leadership, if you were to look it up, is defined as a noun, and I use it as a verb. So here's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that people take stuff like that and discuss it to try and find the truth.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Now, the truth lies somewhere between, okay, maybe we wouldn't use the English word leadership for Ezekiel. Maybe we would. But in the end, you're trying to define how does somebody look that does what they're supposed to do and is in a position where others are watching them, like Ezekiel.
Yeah.
And does it mean that people will actually follow you? Because if leadership is just about people following you, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can get people to follow me. Just give them what they want. I can give them money. I can give them. So getting people to follow me doesn't mean I'm a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can hear the arguments on the other side. Well, that's the definition of leadership, is having people follow you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm not sure then that Christians should be leaders. Not in that sense, because I don't want to manipulate or do things to get people to follow me. I think the Bible uses the word disciple, and discipleship is followership.
Yep.
And so I think that's the word I would use instead of leadership.
Yeah.
However, I also think the Bible teaches leadership, where the Apostle Paul says to Timothy, you follow me, and I'll follow God. That's the leadership thing. There's following going on there, and
Absolutely.
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So now what I just did is take people in a full circle about, okay, you're trying to find a truth of something.
Yeah.
You realize that it's a little fuzzy if you say leadership, what you're talking about. Go to the Bible, start taking a look at some examples, and start getting the truth from the scriptures that are true, and know that God's word is what's true, and we're still growing, trying to learn what truth is.
Yeah.
And as long as you have that in your mind, you'll realize, okay, everyone's growing
Yeah.
and changing. So we have to be careful that majority doesn't determine it. Doesn't determine truth, that feelings don't determine truth, that even individuals around us, even as much respect as we have from, they don't determine the truth.
Right.
In fact, can you determine truth, or does it need to be discovered?
You got to discover it.
Right. So if I'm trying to establish truth, that's the wrong idea in the first place, because truth is already established.
Right.
If you're a doctor, you study how the body works, that kind of thing. It's not like you say, well, I want the liver to do this.
Yeah, good luck.
No, that's not how it works. You discover what the liver does. Then you see when the liver doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and you try and bring it back to do what it's supposed to do. Okay, that's the truth stuff.
Yep.
When you go into the Bible and you read the Bible, you don't go into the scriptures to try and prove a point. You go to discover truth.
Right.
That's a different approach.
Yeah.
If I'm just going in to prove a point, I'm looking up things to try and throw them at you and say you're wrong, and I'm trying to, maybe I'm prideful, whatever it might be. So I have to be careful of that. I want to make sure the truth is discovered. So the words that so far we've thrown around are, you can't manipulate truth, for one thing, but it can't be from a majority rule. So truth can't be from just feelings, which I would throw in there, emotions, urges, desires, whatever, all under the headline of feelings.
Of feelings, yeah. Right.
Okay, so you can't determine truth by feelings. You can't determine truth just because somebody in your life you've decided to trust, and that person said this, so that's it. So you should always be able to verify the truth. Actually, truth is pretty narrow.
Yeah.
By that I mean, it's not where you can have a lot of things true in most areas. For example, if I had something, I'm wearing a gray fleece.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would ask you, how many colors isn't this?
A lot.
Yeah. I don't even know how many colors there are. But this is the only color it is.
Yeah.
So there's one color of it.
Yep.
And if I came back to you and said, that's very narrow-minded of you, well, how would you respond to a statement like that?
Be like, Dave, you're silly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only response, because it's like, no.
It's gray.
It's all the other colors. No matter what you hold up to it, all the other colors, it's not.
Right.
Well, isn't that the definition of narrow-mindedness? So in order for you to be true, you have to be narrow-minded on certain issues.
Right.
So if I walk outside and the sun is not shining, it's up there, but it's hidden by clouds. It's like January in Wisconsin. There's no sun. And you and I are walking, I go, isn't that sun beautiful? You'd be looking at me and go, there is no sun. Why? Because there's a truth there. So now all you're doing is judging by something that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And so I could go, oh, you're so narrow. You don't understand the broader sense of what I'm saying. The sun sheds light even through the cloud. It's fine, Dave. You're stretching this one out a little bit. I think it's important because right now, the generation that's growing up, one of the things is I read about how they're learning and they don't know how to find out truth.
Yeah.
So if you're a young person, I suggest you understand the value of being narrow-minded when there's truth.
Yeah.
Because truth will always be that way. It will always be narrow-mindedness. A frog is a frog. It's not a horse. We can look at a frog or a horse, and you can name every other animal that you know of that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
You're not narrow-minded because you call it by the name that it is. And the society in which we live in today, for some reason, keeps trying to authorize. It's okay if you believe a horse is a cow. No.
No.
Or in some cases, it's okay if you believe a boy is a girl, or marriage should be about this. Or, no, the Bible, there's a truth there.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is that God made male and female, made them different.
Yeah.
That God actually has females, they're made to give birth to children. Males are not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference there. Dave, you're so narrow-minded. No, I'm not. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
But it brings me to the truth. I'm narrow-minded only on the truth side.
Mm-hmm.
Not on, you could come in and say, what's the best genre of music? There's no truth there.
Right.
So you can even make your choice on feelings, I guess, on that one. There is no truth on that one. And if you're arguing that, then you got another issue, because there isn't. Or what is the best food to eat for breakfast?
It's different for everybody.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to find truth here.
Right.
And I think, though, that our whole culture, you have to guard it a little bit, because our whole culture is getting to the point where it's hard to find truth. And if I'm young right now and I'm trying to find truth in life, and I'm letting all the voices in my head, the voices of television, Hollywood, the voices online, the voices in social media, I'm letting all of them in my head, here's what's going to happen. You're going to be a confused person.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a confused person, you're going to act confused.
Yeah.
And the fruit of that is really anxiety, depression, that kind of stuff. Because you don't see any purpose in life, and you don't see any rationale behind it, and anybody can say anything and be right, and it doesn't make any sense to you. So life doesn't make sense to you then.
Yeah.
So I encourage people, you need to start with the Bible and start with the truth. If you don't know where to start, you go to the book of Genesis, and in the book of Genesis, right at the beginning, Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God.
Yeah.
All right, and I would stop right there. Your life needs to reflect that truth. You weren't in the beginning. It wasn't in the beginning, Jason. It wasn't in the beginning, Dave. It's in the beginning, God.
Yeah.
All right, now what does that mean? It means I wasn't there in the beginning. Exactly. That's the truth. So if you want to understand the beginning, who do you go to?
You go to God.
He was there.
Yeah.
Now we begin. And some people might say, well, that's what the Bible says. Yep. That's what it says. It's either right or it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go think about that. And I could be very narrow-minded on some other things as well. Like, and I've used this illustration in messages at camp, but obviously somebody designed this pen.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody made it with a purpose. Somebody manufactured this pen. And if you were to say, oh no, Dave, that pen just came into existence by itself, came here, fell on the floor right here, and you could use it, I would look at you and say, you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm only talking about a pen. I'm not talking about the sun, the universe, or anything else. I think when you read the scriptures, truth also makes sense.
Yeah.
In the beginning, God created. So look at things and you realize there's a plan.
Yeah.
Like the pen. Or like we talked about earlier, male, female, makes sense. Women are made so that they can have children one day. Men are not. That makes sense. See, when you look at truth,
Mm-hmm.
it begins to sort itself out and you go, well, you know what? That actually, I'm not confused anymore.
Yeah.
God tells us that we need to love one another. That's just not a phrase. That's for real. It means I need to look at Jason and think, what can I do to make you the best Jason that you can be?
Yeah.
How can I help you? How can I pray for you? That's what I need to do. That's when you care about somebody else. It tells me to love God, and it actually defines it for me. It's that I should obey God. When I obey God, I love God.
Yeah.
All right, so I go through the Bible now and I start saying, okay, in the beginning God created. He created the heavens and the earth. So now when I go out at night and I look at the stars, I can talk to God about the wonder of his creation.
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden I start living in the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think everybody that's listening wants to live deep down in their heart. They're made to want to live in the context of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So as you love your wife and you're dedicated to her, and she loves you and and she's dedicated to you, and you're dedicated to your family, don't you think that's right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain, you look at it and go, oh yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. That's what I want. Here's what you don't want: self-centeredness, where you and your wife hate each other. You start wanting to be apart. You get a divorce. That's not how God made it in the first place. And your kids are a burden. What kind of household is that? Nobody wants to live in that house.
Mm-hmm.
However, husband who loves wife, wife that loves husband, dedicated to each other for their life, to be pure with each other, dedicated to their families. That's the family I want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do it God's way, you look at it and you say, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what I want then. I want to find out God's plan for the family.
Mm-hmm.
I want to find out his plan for marriage. I want to find out, okay, if God made me a male or a female, I'm thankful.
Yeah.
And I'm going to live in the context of that because he made me that way. I'm going to love the people around me because that's what God made me to do. And again, I go into the scriptures and I get really thrilled that God didn't make anything so difficult we couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
He made it so that we could do it.
Absolutely.
And I've been married now 44 years at the recording of this. Just about 44 years. In another month, it'll be 44 years. And I'm so thankful that we've been able to live out what God has said. I wouldn't want it any other way. I wouldn't want to be enemies with my wife. I wouldn't want to live in a way that's self-centered in that sense. I'm glad God made a design and that we could follow it so that we knew what to do.
Yeah.
And I promise any young person that's listening to us, you're going to want to do things God's way. And when you don't, you will suffer from anxiety, depression, all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, and the best way, I know you have 3 sons.
I do.
And the best way for you to teach that to them is to be an example of the truth.
Yeah.
Not necessarily lecture them,
yeah,
but be an example of the truth to them.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to set up rituals, if you want to call it, or expectations that they can count on. We like that kind of thing. We like being, for example, sitting down at a meal together.
Yeah.
And actually talking through the day. If you do that every day, that's a good expectation to have. Why? Because you're looking at each other. It's relational. There's no phones. There's nothing getting in the way. You just do what's right, and you do what's relational. And in the end, you're thrilled because the confusion about what family should be and how people should act isn't there. Mm-hmm. The only confusion that'll come to your boys is if you do that, is when they start looking at those outside your family and wondering why their families are that way and yours isn't, and they're confused.
Yeah.
And that's where your example can live throughout time. So.
Yeah. And I think the more you look away from truth, the more confusion there is.
Absolutely.
Because God didn't create it to be confused.
And he's not a God of confusion. He tells us that.
Right. There's order in everything.
Yep.
And that's where we think. And so I just encourage you just to take a step back and in a day, just look and see where you're pursuing truth in your life and how you can share that with the next generation, especially in this whole concept of mistruth and distruth.
Right.
Because we face a lot of it. And so just encourage you to go back to the truth. You can know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Absolutely.
That's all the time that Jason and Dave here on Younger and Older. I thank you for joining us and encourage you to re-listen to this one, be encouraged, or check out other podcasts. Take care. See you next time.